All right, it's 2 o'clock, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to our call today. First, I want to go ahead and do a shout out and a thank you to the NCCMA Student Development Committee, specifically those that worked on this kind of project for us, Natalie Pine, Megan Panay, and Carolyn Raymond. I guess I should backtrack a little bit. And for those that don't know me, I'm Margot Boischer. I'm the Secretary Treasurer for the NCCMA chapter. And also on the Student Development Committee. Outside of that, I am the Clubhouse Manager at Sawgrave Club in Washington, D.C. and appreciate all of you being on this call today. Go ahead and introduce Carolyn Raymond, who is the Student Development Committee Chair, to go over some of our upcoming student events that we have this summer.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Margot. I'm very excited. We have an awesome lineup of events for our students, our interns, MITs, and our managers, so we can provide networking events both virtually and in person. Our next event after today will be Monday, April 19th. We are going to be doing a virtual club tour of Woodmont Country Club and Lakewood Country Club. We are working on a community service event with Clean Up the Bay, so we'll send out more information on that. The first in-person event at a club will be on Monday, June 21st at Bretton Woods Recreation Center, with a fun team building and ziplining opportunity for our interns. We are still working on our normal Nationals baseball outing and hoping we'll be able to make that happen late July. Then following that, Monday, July 26th, we'll be at Mount Vernon Country Club learning about greens and grounds. And then August, we're going to do a virtual tour highlighting yacht and boat clubs. And then we look for more virtual tours in the fall and winter. Those will be coming soon. I highly encourage all of you to engage your interns this summer, and please let me know if you are going to have interns and have not let me know yet. I would love to get your name on the list so that we be sure that your interns can join us for all of the fun that we are going to have this summer and beyond. Let me know if I can do anything for any of you, and enjoy the program today. Margot, I'll send it back over to you.
Thanks, Carolyn. I want to let you all know that we specifically chose to do this call not in a webinar format and more in a meeting style. And so it is meant to be a dialogue and a conversation. So along the way, if you have a question, feel free to type it into the chat box or go ahead and raise your hand or unmute, and we can kind of make this more of a conversation as we go, as opposed to just kind of a preaching at everybody. So we're going to go ahead and do some brief introductions of those that were chosen to be on the panel, and have them tell you a little bit about themselves and essentially why, give them some credibility as to why we think that they would be the perfect candidates to speak to us about this topic. So first we're going to start with Emily Lighthall. She's from Tampa, Florida, and is currently a senior at Florida State University. After graduation, she'll be working full-time at Shinnecock Hills Golf Club in New York as a food, beverage, and events manager, and I'll have Emily tell you a little bit more about herself.
Hi, guys. I just want to say thank you so much for having me. And as she said, I'm a senior at FSU, sunny Florida. And so I'm currently the vice president of the FSU Cmaa chapter, which actually just won the chapter of the year at conference. And so I worked the master's in 2019, and then I also have some intern experience with Shinnecock Hills Golf Club and Beach Point Club, both in New York. And then after graduation, I'm going back up to Shinnecock Hills.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. Next, we're going to introduce our local representative, local being Virginia for us, Grace Daniels. Grace is currently a junior at James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia, where she majors in hospitality management and works part-time at Farmington Country Club. I'll let Grace tell you a little bit more about herself.
Hello, everyone. As Margaret said, my name is Grace Daniels. I'm a junior at James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I am the president of JMU Cmaa chapter, and right now I work Sorry, can you guys hear me? It cut out. Okay, I'm sorry. I work part-time at Farmington Country Club. I started in banquets and now just jump around wherever they need me. I'll be interning this summer at New York Athletic Club Traverse Island. Last semester, I worked on a Zoom Around the World club tour series, and that was one of my big projects. It was actually featured in the most previous issue of Club Management magazine. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Grace. Next, we have Matt Gerrity from Brick, New Jersey, and he's a 2020 graduate of the University of South Carolina, go Gamecocks, with a bachelor's degree in hospitality management. I'll let Matt introduce himself and tell you where he is heading on Thursday.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me today. So a little about me. Just recently graduated in December from University of South Carolina. My past internship experiences was this past summer at the Mesquamaket Club in Watch Hill, Rhode Island. And then in the fall, this past fall semester, I did an internship, which was more of a unconventional, not hands-on internship, such as working in a club setting. But what we were able to do was conduct these virtual interviews, such as we're doing today, and create 360-degree virtual tours of clubs that we would get to go tour to present to the classroom for students to see. And now I am an assistant manager at the Winter Center of the Chevy Chase Club. And most recently in November, I was at the Masters Tournament working in the players' locker room, where I'll be heading on Thursday. So I'm very excited for that. And, it's going to be a great experience again.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. And he let us know that the one in November, the documentary that they did on the Masters, will be airing again tonight on ESPN, and you might see a familiar face on there. Although Matt is wearing a mask, he is in that documentary, which is pretty cool. Last but not least on the panel, we have Zach Recchio, 2019 graduate from Niagara University, and he is currently the restaurant manager at the country club at Mirasol, but I'll let him tell you about all of the places that he has worked.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Like Margot said, my name is Zach Recchio. My first internship, I actually worked alongside Margot at the Chevy Chase Club as the clubhouse dining intern. Immediately after that, I was hooked on clubs. So following that, I worked at the New York Athletic Club in a restaurant supervisor position for their summer internship program. And before my senior year of college, I went to Scottsdale, Arizona to work at Desert Mountain under Damon Diorio and his great team. I worked in their club management internship program, rotating through all departments on the management level, which was unbelievably eye-opening to the club industry. And then following graduation, I started at the Country Club at Mirasol in their manager and development program, and just recently became a full-time restaurant manager with Mirasol.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach. Now, last but not least, we'll introduce our moderator, Dr. Matt Samel. Samel holds a Ph.D. in organizational management with specialization in human resources. Dr. Samel teaches at the Johnson Wales University in the College of Hospitality, among other things. I will let him take over the rest of the conversation, and sorry for the printer in the background.
I was hoping that was your printer, Margot, and not something else going on. So thank you, Margot and Carolyn, and it's truly an honor to moderate the conversation. I think it's an important conversation. We often, I think from a faculty perspective, we get to see students, the different generations of students come through. So we're a lot closer to them in terms of maybe understanding the underlying thoughts of why they make decisions. And in many of the managers I talk to, they're like, where's this gap? What are we missing? And I think today's conversation, using internship as the example, is the perfect way to start to explore this. So just as an overview, we're going to be asking the panel to describe the best practices that they've seen in their internship programs, discussing a little bit of transitioning from school to work. And then I know a lot of managers I speak to are frustrated about how we retain this talent. Like students often are getting involved in Cmaa and they're involved in the chapter and they do internships while they're in school. and then they may take a job or may not take a job in the industry, but they kind of disappear. So I think that's a really good conversation to have today. And then I'm excited to actually hear what our panel thinks about what the club industry is going to look like in the future. So with that, I'm going to open the discussion on our first topic about best practices. And I'd ask the panel to comment on what your most valuable lesson that you learned or biggest takeaway from your internship. If you don't like that one, you could also choose the one thing you learned from a manager unexpectedly, something that was impactful or unexpected. So you get two options on that. Going in no particular order, you can go ahead and jump in.
I'll go ahead and start. For me, I would say that in my internships, it was just learning that you need to take every second and take it to the fullest and take no minute at the club for granted. I think that the moment you start to the moment you leave, you can learn something every single day. But that all starts with you as the intern or the MID. I was lucky enough in my internships to have great managers along the way to kind of assist me with that, but without putting yourself out there and asking the questions and kind of learning all those new things. But I think that it's great that a lot of the clubs that are either on this call or that I've had the chance to work at have the managers that care about the students enough to kind of, anytime you ask a question, or I'm sure Margot remembers all the times I'd come to her, or I see Miss Cicerone's on this call as well. Just being able to go to your managers and ask them to learn things or sit with them and chat and just ask questions, I definitely think that that was the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah, going off what Zach said, my time working at the Mesquamaket Club, it was a smaller club, and especially during COVID, it made it even smaller. So I was able to work alongside with the general manager, Phil Koretsky, a lot more than I would probably imagine I would get the chance to. So being able to learn from him and get that, side-by-side experience while working together was really beneficial. And also during the fall when I interned at the University of South Carolina for Jessica Chavis, being able to work with her, as well as connecting with all of USC's alumni through these virtual meetings that we would conduct, was really beneficial towards gravitating after graduation.
I think going off of what Matt said with working so closely with managers, especially during COVID, when I was at Beach Point Club, I worked a lot with Randy Reuter, the manager there, and he was really pushing for super rotational internships. Like, you get all kinds of areas of the club. I even worked in laundry, I worked in the kitchen, I worked at the pool. So really all over. And one thing at the very end, he's like, why do you think we have all the interns work in accounting or laundry or places like that? And his whole big takeaway was, how can you as a future manager expect people to do things if you yourself hasn't done them? So I think that was a really big lesson that I learned, and just like really embracing myself in random parts of the club that I never thought I would be in. And so that now I can go and use that in my job in the future.
I think one of the biggest takeaways I've had so far is to be willing and ready to ask the questions. For me personally, it's very easy just to sit back and put my head down and just get the work done and just grind it out. But just having the curiosity and be willing to ask the questions and not afraid to be assertive is one of the biggest lessons I've taken away so far.
Yeah, like what Emily said about when she was working, how she would work in different departments on certain days. Even as a manager, as a full-time manager right now, I've still gotten the chance to see how different departments operate, to understand how our club as a whole is operating, and to see, each daily operation for each segment of the club.
That's excellent. Excellent responses. So I want you to think back before you had your internship, when you were looking for an internship, because I think one of the gaps I've noticed between what students want, what managers are offering, is there's often this miscommunication up front that's basic information. So if you can think about what you were looking for within your internship, the first of all, things that made you feel comfortable, housing, compensation, location, benefits, things like that, but really separate that from what was really important. What were you looking to accomplish from a learning and understanding aspect?
So I started an internship in a time where I didn't think I'd have any opportunity to get an internship. It was right in the middle of March when I started looking for internships for the following summer when COVID first started. I was offered an internship that ultimately got canceled in, I think, mid-May. So at this point, I was kind of stuck and lost on what I was going to do. Then I was offered an opportunity to work at the Mesquite Club. And with that, one thing that really stood out to me was I didn't mind going to work 3 hours away. It wasn't a big deal leaving my hometown. But for me to go somewhere and have to maybe pay for living expenses is kind of tough. So being that I was offered housing is a great opportunity, so you're not going out of your way and you can, live for free basically and still just get to work and get the experience.
For me, I think most internships that I either applied to or that had accepted kind of did a good job laying out the housing, pay, all of that basic information. But for me, it was kind of more so looking for the nitty gritty. What are they offering in terms of what will I be doing for the summer? What departments will I be in? If some have their internships specifically laid out, what responsibilities and duties will I have day to day? But I think definitely the top number one was just kind of the feeling from the first interview with the first manager that I met from that club to all the managers that I would be working with that summer to the GM. Are they going to be invested in their interns? Am I going to get a good learning opportunity out of this? Am I going to be able to grow while I'm there or kind of branch out and meet other club managers as well? I think that's definitely something that students don't tend to look for, but it's something as managers that are kind of invested in student development that we need to kind of practice ourselves and share amongst each other.
I pay attention if you're going to the practical parts of it. Housing, yes, because I've always looked for internships far away from my hometown. Specifically to dates, I've run into trouble with it in the past that a lot of clubs want interns to be able to stay well into September. And as college students, that is really difficult to work out with your professors, especially if you're taking a full class load. Another good thing I look for is, are they willing to have the interns participate in local Cmaa events, and making sure it's truly an internship. I've noticed sometimes some listings are really just seasonal positions that are labeled as internships, and you don't really get the opportunity to speak with the general manager or work with them directly. And then the last thing for me is finding managers and a team that is as willing to work with you and accommodate you as you are to accommodate the opportunity that they're giving you, if that makes sense.
I definitely agree with Grace on the Cmaa events and getting involved in that club's chapter, because when I was at Shinnecock Hills, that was one thing that I got to do, but I didn't know I was getting to do. So I think if some other clubs are going to let interns get super involved in that and tell students that ahead of time, they might be much more interested in joining and being a part of their club.
All right, that's great. Actually, I want to circle back before we go to the next question, because I just had this same conversation with one of my students. So, there's the internship and how it's laid out and what the managers and the club need from you, and then what else you're looking for from that experience. And Grace mentioned it, and I had my own student mention this, like you want to spend time with the GM. So my conversation with this particular student was, well, it might be outside the realm of the internship program, and you're going to do that on your time. But I got a more important question. Why? What are you going to ask them? What is it you think you're going to spend in that maybe 2 hours a month with that GM? What is it that you want out of that interaction?
I feel like being able to talk to a GM or spend time with them, just being able to pick their brain, like what made them become a GM? How do they get there? What do they do to, spark their membership to get them there? What do they do for their membership? How do they work with their board of directors and such as that?
Yeah, I agree with Matt. I think that as an intern, you kind of are getting your feet wet in the club industry, but not really knowing what a GM does. And for most of us that are starting in the club industry in our internships, that's kind of our end goal. So I think it is important to kind of be able to ask about how things work with the board and different club committees. And I mean, even the GM might even let you sit in on a board meeting or a committee meeting, which if you do is a great experience and I highly encourage it. But again, if you're not asking those questions, I don't think those opportunities are going to arise for you as an intern. But I think that with that time with the GM and like Matt said, picking their brain, that's when those doors are going to open for you.
And going off of that, by picking a GM's brain, every club is so different. So by getting those opportunities with different GMs, you can really learn so much about the industry, about the board, and just how each club operates. And then you can really take that into your career and kind of take a bunch of those little pieces and make your own kind of leader.
Great, that helps me because when when I asked that student, they said, well, that's a really good question. I'm not really sure. And I said, well, before you ask a GM for their time, you better think about what it is specifically that you want from them. Because I think, I just think the general managers aren't looking at it like that. Like, okay, they're not going to be a general manager for X number of years. It doesn't mean it's not important that you understand how the management team interfaces with membership and the board. I think that's an excellent goal to be able to experience that. But as I think Zach said, if you don't communicate that as an individual or as a goal, in our school, the students are asked to develop learning goals. If you don't include that, they're not going to know. So that's excellent. I think Margot indicated that we had a couple of questions that people already had for you. So before we wrap up best practices, maybe we can refer to those.
We did have a question come through from Jessica. Sometimes students feel that their practical experience doesn't align with what they are promised during their interview. Do you feel like your internship was what you expected? And this is definitely something that I think Grace had touched on, where sometimes clubs will label something as an internship when really the expectation is you're just working in quote unquote the pool snack bar or something along those lines. So do you feel, either from your own experiences or friends' experiences, that clubs, maybe more in general, are doing a good job of communicating expectations? And if not, how could they do better?
I think that clubs could definitely at least talk. Maybe they don't have to advertise it as much, but talk with an individual who they may be thinking of hiring and kind of break it down more on how they'll be, interning or what their working environment will be like. Because sometimes you might just get thrown into, a position just to fill a spot where you thought you were coming or traveling all this way just because you got an quote unquote internship. Was the internship what you expected? I can tell in my experience in the fall, when Jessica sent me over the internship layout, I honestly thought I was going to be working like an office job and just doing busy work for her, because I know this internship just kind of sprung up in the last couple months due to COVID. We're trying to figure things out, but I can say 100% that it was way more than what I expected. And I got so much out of it and so much that helped me out after graduation, and still like I'm still in contact with her all the time. So, sometimes your internships, yeah, they might not be what you expect, but sometimes they could be a lot more than you expected.
I agree with Matt. My internship at Shinnecock Hills was more of the basics, like that really, I was really able to just like see the basics of the club industry. And at FSU, one of our graduation requirements is 6 months of internships, and it kind of has like a layout of some things that you should learn when you're at your internships. So I was actually able to share that with Shinnecock, and they have incorporated some of those things into their internship now, so that incoming interns are able to like hit some of those key points that they can use in the future.
That's great. I'm sorry, my internet keeps cutting in and out, so I just didn't want to jump in if somebody else was going to take on that a little bit more. I think that's an important topic. Is I often get, I get like right now I got 5 inquiries for interns, and I said, great, why don't you send me an outline of your internship program? And I don't need to know more about the club. I just want to know what the students are going to do at the club. And they were like, well, give me a couple of days and I'll write that up, right? That's not what I want to send it as a faculty advisor. I don't want to send a student into a situation like that. That's a summer job. And somebody brought up the timing and the seasonality of this. I often discuss with students a summer job that works into an internship into the fall. And I've talked to managers about that, because sometimes that timing works out where you get to do a job at the club and then that transitions into an internship. And I think that's a valuable experience for some students. But again, going back to, I think Matt said it, that, you may want a rotational internship and you want to get a little bit out of each department, or you want a focused internship in one area like food and beverage. I think that's really important for both the student and the clubs to understand that they may need to offer more than just one type of internship. I see that maybe being something to look at in the future. All right, in the last area before we move on from best practices, this is often a gap I see, especially on our end at the university. So can you explain how you found the internship? Was it internally through the school? Did you go to the Cmaa website? How did you first get to, oh, wow, I think I want to do an internship here? Can you explain that to better, maybe explain to so the managers understand, well, this is where students go to look for internships?
I personally look on the Cmaa job boards, and that's I've been hired for 2 internships. The first I wasn't able to complete because of COVID, but both of those I found through there. But we do have a lot of students in our chapter. When the managers reach out directly, sometimes they'll reach out to me because my contact information is on the website as the chapter president, or to our faculty advisor with the outlines of the internship, saying this is what they're looking for, and asked us to share it with our students. And we've had 4 or 5 students this year get their internships through that way.
When I was first looking for internships, I was just going directly to clubs' websites and seeing what opportunities they had. And if they didn't have an opportunity posted, I was sending emails to general managers or managers just to see what opportunities were there. Like I said, I was looking for internships at a time where COVID first started. So it was tough. Not many things were as advertised, I guess. But I found my first internship by just reaching out to one of my professors and asking if they knew of anything, because I was kind of at a standstill where I needed to get these credits to graduate through an internship, but I just couldn't find one because of the times. So I was definitely grateful that I was helped out, especially from the University of South Carolina, creating internships, and as well as, making connections so that they can send their students to participate in internships.
I think that the CMAA website is definitely a good resource, but unfortunately not all clubs use that to post their internship postings or MID postings. So sometimes you do, excuse me, you have to dig a little deeper, whether it be the specific regions, chapter region website, or even club websites. But I think that a lot of schools do career fairs. I know this year they kind of adapted to do online. Mirasol, we've participated in quite a few, and there's still more coming up. But each school is different as well. And then obviously each CMAA chapter has their students with their students network and their professors network that kind of put them in touch. But it also, if students are kind of figuring out which region they want to be in or what type of club, whether it be city club, yacht club, sometimes it does take a little bit more digging than just logging into CMAA, clicking on internship postings and seeing what's there. It's definitely a great resource, but there's usually some more to it. This past year for Mirasol, we hired about 7 students during this COVID period that were either doing online classes or just kind of had some time off of school. And we actually used LinkedIn this year. So we just kind of mass put out on LinkedIn, hey, we're gonna hold some Zoom sessions to get information out. And we actually hired all of our students from the Zoom sessions that we did and that we posted via LinkedIn.
I think another thing is sending stuff to the faculty advisors. That's how I got my very first internship. And like, what better way to look for students when it's literally coming straight into a student's inbox? Then they're able to see all the information right there, apply, they're already on their computer, and our faculty advisor is constantly sending out things. And so it's just a great way to get immediately in touch with students.
Oh, I thought somebody else was going to go. I was giving you the big heart, Emily. And I think that's important because sometimes, you know, it's hard for the clubs because they're independent. It's not like they're going to use CMAA, but I think, and I know I reach out to clubs all the time, I think sometimes the club manager feels they can't reach out to the faculty advisor, and I'd strongly encourage it. And I would go one step further. One of the things we did with our chapter that was very successful is and the students came up with this. They wanted the chapter meetings to also include some value so that new students coming in, seeing CMAA for the first time, would get a little bit more than just another club organization chapter meeting. So they insisted on either an education session or internship, so an internship or job opportunity. So we highlighted a club that had quality internships or had contacted us, and then we let them present to the chapter. So I thought that was highly effective. And I think the managers were like, wow, that would be great if we could get in front of your chapter. And on the other hand, it helped us recruit. It helped the marketing of us recruiting for more members. Like, come to this chapter meeting if you need an internship or summer job. Here are the clubs that are going to be on the call. So I thought that was very effective this year. And I think, good, bad, or indifferent, because of COVID, we had the ability to do that. The other thing I would add to that is we do, because we're in the New England region, we have a lot of clubs pretty local. We do a lot of tours. So we do tours of clubs where we do our chapter meeting and we allow the manager. I think the manager's best spot is when they're in their own club talking about their club and the opportunities, and the students get it. They get it once they're physically there. So managers that are out there, I guess my little words of wisdom is do not be shy. Reach out to those faculty advisors because that's the connection. Believe me, I have a club class this semester. I have 40 managers who are topic experts. I do not want to lecture for 2 hours and 45 minutes on aquatics because I know nothing about aquatics. Okay? And the students really, it's 40 more connections with managers that they wouldn't have gotten. So I would say to the managers on the call, don't be shy. And the last thing I'll add is, so some of the regions, like the New Jersey region, has this great internship booklet where the students can flip through, see all the clubs, and they can click the link within the booklet, and that takes them to the website of the club, and they can apply for internship. And that's an entire region approach. So I thought those are some of the things I saw over the last 2 years.
Dr. Samel, I just wanted to add that I think some clubs might not know how to reach out to the faculty advisors. I think those connections have kind of organically happened over the years from managers or wherever you've worked or different connections. So if there's any managers on the call that are wanting to connect with the faculty advisors, Carolyn I know has in our NCCMA student development chapter, we have created a database, or we're in the process of trying to maintain a database of all the faculty advisors so we have all of your information in one place and can send out names or lists or contacts or get onto email groups that way organically. And then we are in the process of copying the New Jersey's book idea, because we liked that idea that you can go to an area and market the NCCMA chapter or the DMV area across the nation and at conference and stuff. We had started that last year, and with everything COVID, that kind of has been paused and on the back burner, but hopefully we'll start again. So if there's any managers that want help from the Student Development Committee getting their internship out and publicized or communicated or help make these connections, reach out to Carolyn or myself and know that we can help, and I know some of you all have, help make those connections for you.
That's great, Margot. And I'm pretty sure the faculty advisors are listed on the CMAA webpage. If you look it up by school and chapter, it's got the chapter e-board and the faculty advisor's name as well. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, I would like our panel to discuss or comment on this transition from school to, quote, the real world. I hate that terminology. I hate the terminology pivot. And if those of you, the other term I hate is intern. If we can come up with something, a different title for that, I think that would go a long way in being able to talk about internships and clubs being unique, but that's a discussion for another day. So so the bullet points under this, if you can think about commenting, what are your biggest fears upon becoming a recent graduate, and how can managers help with the transition from school to career?
I think my biggest fear upon graduating was that I wasn't fully experienced and was scared that I'd be entering a position where I wouldn't know how to fulfill my tasks and wouldn't have the right guidance to do so. But I can certainly say that my time at Chevy Chase so far, I've definitely experienced a lot, and have been able to really have a lot of guidance from many of my coworkers that have really helped me out throughout the way. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you should really be fearful of it. Yes, it's nervous. Yes, it's new. Even if you don't think you're ready, everyone's there to help you. As we call it working here, everybody works in the team, whether it's your line level employees, your managers, your assistant managers. We're all working together. We're all here to help each other. So whatever makes the operation run as smooth as possible is what the team's going to do to help that succeed.
Going off of that, I'm about to graduate in less than a month, which is really freaking me out. And along with that, I'm about to move all the way from Florida to New York. So I think, like what Matt was saying, just having people at the club that I know I can ask questions to, or even that aren't in the club that are mentors or other managers. Like if I just have a question and I got to get it answered, I know I can go to some of those people and they'll help guide me through the process.
I think a big part of it too is definitely making sure that you're joining a club where you kind of fit the team that's already established. Before I started at Mirasol, a few months prior, when I was in the interviewing process, I actually came down to Florida, went to the club for a whole day, They actually gave me a name tag and put me on the floor with their management team, which was kind of unique. And I thought I was just there kind of meeting the managers and finishing up some interviews, but they put me right to work. And I think that that was a great opportunity for me. Not all clubs are going to do that, but I'm sure if you reached out and said, hey, I'd love to come kind of see the club operation while you're in your interview stages, I think that that's a good way to see if you fit the team. They were doing a 350 person grand seafood night, and I was working in the lobby in the lounge with another one of the managers. And I think that that was kind of the icing on the cake for me, that I knew after graduation, when I would start there, that I would fit kind of well with that team. Even internships, I think that kind of, if you have the opportunity, I've reached out to clubs that I applied to and said, hey, can I drive down, or can I come visit the club for a day? Just so that way you can really get a feel for it. And I think that that'll kind of make that transition a lot smoother.
That's awesome. So I was on a young managers panel call that UMass Amherst, Hannah Kemp, superstar. And I think there were like 4 or 5 other student chapters on the call. And one of the students said this, and I was like, wow, managers need to hear this. I think the clubs do a fantastic job in their onboarding and getting the students acclimated to work. This student wished someone from the club would drive them around the town, the part of the community that the club is in, that they've never been in before, and show them like, hey, this is where you can get your dry cleaning done. Here's the area of town, you should never drive it. I was just like, wow, you know, we have GPS and technology, but it's not the same. I think if a manager or someone on the team took the time to drive the student around the community and get to let them see where, you know, how the club fits into the environment. I thought that was really, really a good suggestion. Because as the panel has said, you know, they're willing to travel, but now they're in this new place that they know nothing about. So, you know, I go back to those easy things that managers can do, you know, on the internship sheet, where they say, well, this is the comp, this is your housing, all those things. This is another easy thing that I think will make them feel comfortable. And I'll add one other caveat to that. It is often not the student's decision. I want the managers to hear this. It's not often only the student's decision to move halfway across the country to do an internship. The parents are still very heavily involved. Sometimes too much, I say, but that opportunity to reach out to a parent is there. You know, if it's close, I don't know what your policies are, but I might even think about inviting the parents to the club so they can see that. Because just like students didn't understand clubs, parents don't understand clubs either. And I just think there's an opportunity there to, you know, when we talk to incoming freshmen, parents want to hear that faculty are going to look after their son or daughter and they're going to be safe. They're going to be safe here, and we are going to help them be successful. And in the back of my mind, I'm saying, and if you stay out of the way, they're going to be really successful. But I thought that was some interesting comments from some students from another panel. So one other question in this category. What did you wish you were told as a student prior to graduating that nobody told you? Nothing? Okay, we can move on. Something that you wish you had known, that somebody was like, wow, I wish somebody had told me that before I did this.
I have one actually. Before my very first internship at Shinnecock, that was my very first internship in the club industry. I didn't really know that much. That was really getting to learn the basics. And I think just someone should have told me, get ready to work hard and a lot, because I wasn't prepared. But I think that was one thing that like if I knew I would be ready for, but it was also a good little reality check. But I think like that's one thing about the club industry is that you're going to work really hard and a lot, but it's really going to pay off.
I think I am kind of in the opposite boat as that one, where I tend to overcommit to things and just say yes to everything. So something that beginning in the club industry, and even I did an internship this past summer outside of it was still in the hospitality industry, it just wasn't with a club, but just to say that it's okay not to do everything. You don't have to be there and be doing something 24/7. It's okay to prioritize your personal life sometimes rather than being 100% work all the time.
I agree with Grace on that one. I think that, like to Emily's point, you're going to go in, you're going to start, and you're going to grind, sometimes working 70 hours a week or even more. But to Grace's point, definitely take that time off to yourself. That was a struggle for me my first full year at Mirasol, and now I've kind of learned to, when I'm not at work, I don't look at my work email. Yes, it's a struggle. I'm seeing some pop up now because I'm off today and I want to answer them right away, but it's something that has kind of just been difficult to struggle with, but adapting to. But I think that we all need to do that sometimes. I know that everyone in CMA is so passionate. I don't think I've met someone in CMA that's not passionate about their job or just the club industry in general. But sometimes it is nice to detach and kind of put the phone away for your days off and just be able to enjoy.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said. Coming into Chevy, there was a thing that the managers put on was to list your needs. And we had to list 4 of our top needs. One of my top needs was balance. And like what Zach said, having that work-life balance, working hard on your days while you're there. But when you're off, take that time to yourself and really enjoy yourself and, kind of de-stress from work.
So that's excellent, Matt, because one of the other words that managers hate is this work-life balance thing. And I think there's this huge communication gap between they think it means you don't want to work hard and you're saying, I'm going to work hard, but I need a little me time. So there's 2 things I want to add with that. One was my previous comment. When you're off, right, you don't know where you are, so you don't know where to go. And you don't have anybody to hang out with. So I will let this region know, and I'm not going to say the region that this idea came from because it'd probably burn down my house. So that region gets together, gets all the interns that are interning in that region, and they do a function just for the interns. So all the clubs in the area that are hosting an intern, they get together and so you can meet interns that are at other clubs in your area because that's who you should hang out with, other interns. And, you're not really hanging out with your work group. Can't be the employees, might be the managers. But I think that from what I've heard from interns, that's a little awkward too. So who best knows what you're going through than another intern? And you'll probably have a roommate, which might be helpful if you have housing. But I thought that was an excellent idea to get the interns from the area together, from all the clubs, to get, just so you had somebody to talk to, but to do a function just for them, hosting them maybe in the first couple of weeks they're on site. Sorry, I closed my file with the questions. Give me a second. Okay, so, all right, so moving on to the next topic. So this has been a discussion within CMAA, within the managers for quite a while. And it has to do with retaining talent. So there's been a lot of discussion about how students and young managers are engaged with CMAA and private clubs while they're in school, while they're on internship, maybe even upon graduation, and then they either do not fully commit to the industry full time. They just don't stay. Can you speak to that a little bit from the standpoint of why you're in school and you're all excited, and what might the experiences that you had would cause, that are definitely causing you to stay, but other things you might have seen that you're like, you know what, if I saw that again, that might be something that would cause me to either leave the club or leave the industry. Something along those lines.
I can speak a little bit on that. I think that a big part of retention from my perspective is the people and less so about the work. So, you know, you can have really negative experiences with people and it'll put you off, yes, but the most impactful experiences I've had with people is like having conversations with, you know, professors or managers and them telling stories and having that personal connection and sitting back and realizing like I'm in the right spot. So I think a lot of it has to do with the effort that you put into making the connections with the people that you're around.
I completely agree with that. I think that the connections in CMA is definitely a reason I've stayed. I mean, I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't met Margot in my first internship. So I think that if you are passionate about the club industry, those connections that you make are definitely something to hold on to. But also I've seen students that go into an internship, whether it be their last, like right before their senior year, so the summer after junior year, or even they'll get kind of roped into getting one after they graduate. And with those internships, sometimes clubs I've seen, they kind of promise that intern, hey, once you're done with your internship, you can come work for us full-time as a manager. And then XYZ might happen and that might not work out. So then it kind of turns some students off from kind of jumping back into the industry when they had one bad experience at one club. I mean, sometimes it does happen, like we were talking about earlier, where internships might not kind of be promised what they were, but I would say in the club industry, don't let one kind of bad egg spoil the rest. I think that there's a lot of great clubs out there and some that are kind of just figuring their way out with internships might need some extra help, but I think that students should kind of explore more opportunities than let that one kind of ruin the rest for them.
So do you think that, and I'm just getting this sense that involvement at the student chapter when you're at school, like that's a school activity, and they don't, like my students will get engaged in that and they go to conference and they do all this thing, but they see that as a school thing, not a work thing. Do you see, and I've had managers say that to me, that that's one of the gaps. They think that all the things we're doing for them through CMAA and the education, that's school. And they don't connect that to pre-launch for industry. Can someone talk to that a little bit?
I think some students could possibly struggle with associating CMAA with work because maybe some of the clubs that they're at, they're not super involved in CMAA. So then they associate CMAA just with school, and now they're not seeing it in the future. And that's where that divide could come in.
Anyone have any other thoughts on that before we move on? So one of the things I was thinking about as we were talking about that is, especially to Zach's point about if there isn't an opportunity. So that's one intern at one club. If we take the idea of getting all the interns together at the beginning of the internship program and creating that cohort, what a fabulous opportunity to do it at the end, so that Zach's at a club that really doesn't have a management position. And I can tell you, managers will say, if I don't have a position, and they've said this, I will find you a position at another club or help you do that. I feel a student doesn't always ask that question. Well, if you have a position here or don't have one here, can you have it somewhere else? But I'm trying to look at the opportunity where before you go, before internship's over, that there's this exit interview kind of process, or, you know, what's going to be next for you, rather than, hey, you know, it was great working here, or you know, this is, you know, I don't want to work here anymore. It was a great experience. You know, I think that feedback's important, but what is your next step is just important for the managers to understand too, because they don't want to lose you. If they don't have a position for you, they don't want you to leave the industry. So I think that that's certainly an area that we could explore a lot more. So the last focus or area that we wanted to discuss for our panel today was, and I know the managers are really interested in this too. What do you think? What do you think the future of the club industry looks like? What do you think? Where do you think it's going, and what are you most excited about?
I think the club industry is going to keep growing, especially I think COVID had a big part to play in it, although you may see a decrease now just due to capacities and whatnot. I think after all the dust is settled, that clubs will see more of an influx of membership inquiries. With my last internship, I've spoke with over 20 general managers, and they've all talked about how they've seen increased numbers of, whether it's golf, their wait lists have increased a ton, just because, you know, people want to come into these clubs where they know they have this safe environment, or environment that has some sort of quality control and tracking that a lot of people are looking for, especially in the COVID age. And you know, I think it's a very safe environment that people will be going towards.
Going off of what Matt said last summer at my internship at Beach Point, like, people do feel safe in their club. And I think that was one thing that we heard a lot, is being in New York, people are like, I'm afraid to go out, but I want to come to the club. So people are going to want to start coming back and start getting that sense of normalcy back. And I think we'll see a big increase.
We've definitely been seeing that down here in Florida. At Mirasol, we're a residential club. So at most in past seasons, we'd have about 30 homes for sale at a time on average. But this year with COVID, it's been down to between 5 and 10. And most of it is that the members are feeling so safe to come to the club that they're telling their friends to, hey, our club is open, our club is great. So then their friends are becoming members, or picking up leases from houses that members are kind of going to spend time with family. So I think that the buzz about joining private clubs is definitely going to keep growing and growing. But I also think that especially in certain areas, whether it be Florida, Arizona, California, where you have those kind of resort style clubs, I think that memberships are going to continue to get younger and younger, just because a lot of families, whether they kind of are those long-term family members, but also kind of the working class that just want to be a part of something and kind of want a way to meet friends or other young professionals. And I know there's those kind of boutique clubs opening up, like the Soho House is a common one. They have one in New York City, Miami, kind of all these big cities. I think that that might kind of be the next wave of the club industry.
All right, I was just waiting for somebody to jump in on that. So I also saw in the chat box, where's Julia? Julia Rush, where are you? There she is. So can you talk about this a little bit, Julia, this intern survival guide? I love that idea.
So it was summer of 2017. I was at the Atlanta Athletic Club, and we were in the same boat. They put us up in a house apartment situation. There were 3 of us interns in a 2-bedroom apartment. And we all had cars, but none of us really knew anything about the area because we were in like the upper suburbs of Atlanta. Like we weren't close to downtown, and we didn't know hardly anything. Like there wasn't a convenient Walmart. You had to like go searching for one, or like just the creature comforts of literally just knowing which radio station you would put on. for the surrounding areas, which was a lot of work. So I put together an instructions, directions kind of portion for that side of things. So I used our apartment address. They had a member friend who owned this complex, so I got a good deal. So I was like, it's safe to assume that potentially we'll use this in the future. And I would start directions kind of MapQuest style and go from there. So they would move out. There'd be a Walmart, a Publix, a CVS, like we had Kroger. And so all of those logistics got put in, but I found like fun restaurants, and we were close to downtown Roswell, which is like nice nightlife, but like low key. So I kept it sort of close by to where we were living and the club, and just kind of directions and things to avoid. There's certain roads that get really trafficy because our internships started earlier in the summer than school kids were out of school. So there were 2 roads that had major schools on them on the way to work. And I'm like, avoid those, things like that. But then for the other side of things, I put together a bio for the top like 10 people at the club, and then a few like stragglers who've just been at the club and kind of were institutions for a long time. So I talked about certain, you should stay on this person's good side, or, made funny comments about certain things like that. So to keep it kind of lighthearted, and then just kind of a general what to expect when they were doing each rotation of the internship and kind of where they would be for the next summer. So that was a lot of fun because our internship experience, the 3 of us, my year, lacked a lot of that. We weren't rotational interns. I was a banquet intern, and then the 2 other girls that I was with were the senior, basically pool manager and junior pool manager. Like they weren't, it was a summer job, kind of like y'all talked about in the beginning. So me being the inside person, I had a lot more access where I could say like, hey, I want to spend the day with accounting. Hey, I want to, I could ask for those opportunities. But we were so short-staffed at the pool that those 2 didn't have as many opportunities to get inside and do a lot of the things that I was lucky enough to do. So I tried to include some of the key pieces of information or like details that they would have missed because they were going to be outside. But thankfully, the next year I came back as a full-time employee at the AAC, and we did include rotational internships. So I got to just tell them face-to-face instead of using my intern survival guide. So it was a lot of fun. It was a good project.
Awesome. That's awesome. It's like, I was thinking, oh, well, maybe she made it into like a treasure hunt thing. So it's more a covert guide for that club. That's even better. That's even better. All right. So as we start to wrap up here, I invite the managers who seem to be very quiet, unusual for the managers that I know that are on the call, that are Johnson Wales alums that I know like to talk. And we have one superstar manager that I love bringing into my class all the time. And I know she doesn't mix words. So love to hear from the managers and see what you thought from the student perspective. Any ideas, anything helpful, anything that may have been that you hadn't have thought of maybe. Wow, this is just like my class, just so you know.
I just wanted to say I'm Natalie. I work at Army Navy in Arlington. I'm going to be stealing that survival guide idea because just things like lingo, like I didn't know that we called them CEOs instead of BEOs at my club, and that was like really confusing. So anything like that, I'm just writing a list of all the things that I want to put in the survival guide. So thank you for that idea.
Natalie and Julia, I think you should make one for the NCCMA, which I think in the past there used to be something that existed, or they used to do a scavenger hunt with the interns when they first all got to the area, but we haven't done that, I think, in a couple of years. But I think that I think you all just have volunteered yourselves to do one for the for the NCCMA chapter. We'd like that on May 1st, preferably. Electronic and a hard copy would be phenomenal.
Literally, this is like my Zoom class where all the students are blacked out and all the professional speakers they're on. So it's hilarious. So one more call for manager input or just to say hello. I haven't seen a lot of you in a couple of weeks.
So I'm not a manager, but I'll be happy because I feel you, Matt. I have those same blank faces that stare at me too. So Emily and Grace, at one point, y'all had both said that you're scared about graduating and you don't feel prepared. And I think Matt and Zach, y'all also referenced that. Just know that you are way more prepared than you think you are. Like, CMA is nothing but a big old family that wants to make sure that you succeed. Otherwise, we wouldn't even spend time doing sessions like this, right? So you are going to go into this industry and you're going to rock it and you're going to kill it. And then you can be the blank faces on the screen that don't answer when Matt calls for clubs to like come. I know, I'm telling you, I get it. So y'all are going to be awesome. You're going to kill it. It's going to be great. And you're already setting your professional standard today. So just being asked to be on this is awesome. So nice job. I was just telling Hannah in a private chat, I feel like I'm a part of the DC market because I'm in so many of y'all's meetings these days. So thanks for not kicking me out yet. I appreciate that.
I think a common theme from the students and recent grads is they love to see the rotational aspect. And so I encourage all of you as you look at your internship programs, a lot of us have a need that needs filled and an intern is perfect for that. But you have to remember that you can give back so much more, giving them opportunity, even if it is a day or two to interview or a couple hours to interview our different managers. It's so, so important. So as you look at your programs, I know many of you are welcoming students very soon. Make sure you're asking them, every so often, is this internship meeting your expectations? Are there areas that we have not planned for that you still want to see? Because I found that that's super important as you figure out, what your intern's very passionate about, and then putting them in places like purchasing. I know, although I was a student quite some time ago now, I know spending some time in purchasing was really fascinating. And some of my students that didn't say they wanted to go into that rotation found that one of the most fascinating, especially right before lobster night. Taking in the lobsters was a lot of fun. So definitely providing those opportunities that are a little outside of the box, I think are great. And hopefully, we as the Student Development Committee can assist you with adding fun additions if needed. This panel's been great to give suggestions. I do want to shout out not only the panelists and Professor Samel, but also for Margot for putting this together and being the brainchild with Education Committee. She's done an excellent job working with our committee to get this going. So thank you all for joining, and certainly more can jump in, but wanted to thank her as well.
Thanks, Carolyn. The best part about being the host is that you have this little ability to ask people to turn on their videos. So if you've gotten the nudge from me, I've been giving everybody little nudges for their cameras.
So Carolyn also brought up an important point that I think the manager should also think about. Two things. As faculty, we are selling, if you will, the private club industry as small to medium-sized businesses that need all business acumen. Not just F&B, not just culinary. You think of Johnson & Wales and they think about hospitality and culinary, but we have accounting, we have tech, we have other majors. And when we talk about club awareness, we're saying it's an industry for all majors. So I think as you think about what an intern is at your club, I think it's helpful maybe to go back and think about, all right, we're going to have an internship position for an entire year. What does that look like? In season, off season. What kind of intern might I need off season? And what do those skill sets look like? It may not be F&B. Maybe you need somebody in purchasing. Maybe you need an HR intern to help revise your policies. I think we often look at the position, as the students have said, well, when they're busy, they need somebody. And I'm not suggesting you're going to displace an employee, but that kind of experience can be just as beneficial to students, especially that aren't hospitality related. I mean, even if they are hospitality related, but I think broadening that scope of project work is really important.
Professor Samel, it's Alicia.
Oh, and Alicia, yay!
Yeah. So sorry. So most people know that I'm not anywhere near the club right now, and I'm herding a cattle of children. So forgive me for not turning on my camera. But I did want to know, and I sent you a message in the chat, and maybe some of this, the interns managers can talk about this, but how does an internship directly affect the type of club that they would want to choose to work for in their next opportunity, or leader they would choose to work for? Do they believe that the mindset is you're choosing the club, or are you choosing the leader that you work with or team?
I would say for me personally, obviously there's a lot of great clubs that have good recognition, and hi, Miss Cicerone, good to virtually talk to you. But I think that a lot of it should be the manager. And for me, that was definitely a big part in all of my internships that I was looking for and my job after post-grad. I think that in your early stages of your internship, it's kind of hard to even think of that. But my first internship kind of started with a connection to a manager that had worked at the club at Chevy. Actually, her parents lived down the road from my parents, oddly enough. So that one small connection of her seeing kind of my address kind of sparked that. But then it was, once I interviewed, met more managers there, it was like, okay, wow, these managers really care about their interns. They care about their club, the program, they care about CMAA. So then I kind of took what I saw from that interview process, and then my following summer when interviewing for an internship, it was the same thing all over again. Like, okay, is this manager going to be invested in not only myself, but all the other interns? Are they going to involve us in CMAA? So I definitely think that finding the manager is the best option, but I don't think a lot of students realize that until kind of their maybe second or third internships, or just even a little later. Even sometimes they don't realize it until they're interviewing for post-grad as well.
I would agree. And I think that a big part of what that comes down to is something that, you know, I've also dealt with, is like knowing the correct questions to ask, because everyone says, go to a club for a manager, not for like a pedigree or a title, but what do you look for in a manager? And it takes a little bit of experience to know, you know, first of all, it's personalized to you, past the, you know, the certain boxes that they need to tick off. So I think a lot of younger students do tend to choose based off of the club, and then the more experience you get and the more you learn about yourself and how well you perform in certain environments, then it is more based off of the managers, sorry.
That's a great question.
I'm very appreciative.
Alicia. Really good question. And great response, Grace. I think the honesty, it's hard. It's hard, you know. I think one of the things that CMAA was trying to do, and especially a conference, is set up these mentors, you know, and I think that's a great proactive approach, but it's disappointing when there isn't a lot of involvement in a program like that. But I just think it, you know, once you make that connection, it's like finding the club. You know the club you want to work at when you're there, and you see it, feel it, and meet the people. And I think Grace is absolutely correct. It's a personal decision. And I will say, I'll even go out on a limb, that say it's more a personal decision in the club industry about employment than it is other hospitality segments. Far more than hotel. I can guarantee that.
Yeah, Professor, and I would add to Jessica's comments as well, like when students say they feel unprepared, you know, some something that I feel very strongly about. And I think that students, managers, doesn't matter for all of us on this call, you're equally interviewing the club. I think that we get really fearful when we think someone's interviewing me and I've got to be perfect and I have to have all these things. But if you kind of flip that mentality when you walk in on that confidence level, you're equally interviewing the club to make sure they can deliver on all the things that you think are important. And so to not fall in love with the facilities, but making sure that there's a true connection is really valuable in the long run.
Just on that note, what I tell students when they tour the club or when they come to interview is that touring clubs is like touring colleges. When you're there, you're either comfortable and you like the people and you kind of like the goals and the facility and all of that, or you feel really uncomfortable. I mean, I know all of us have walked into clubs and been like, this is beautiful, but it's not for me. So kind of talking to the students who haven't had that experience, I just compare it to touring colleges.
And Professor, if you don't mind, I have one more question. You touched upon it, but I really want to make sure I understand from the younger generation of managers that we have coming through. When you're in school and you're making that decision on the club industry, you know, we reference the student faculty as being a big influencer in your lives. What else is a large influencer or driver? Is it the peers that you're working with alongside in the student chapter of Cmaa? Is it your parents? Who are the other main influencers besides faculty advisors?
Me personally, I randomly joined Cmaa and didn't even know about clubs at all before I joined it. So I joined, in my participation in Cmaa and being a part of the student leadership here really drove me to want to work in the club industry post-graduation.
Yeah, I'm similar to Grace. Sorry to cut you off, Zach. I'm similar to that. I first went to school for sports management, and then I kind of fell into hospitality, and taking a bunch of Jessica's classes and being able to work alongside of her has really mentored me towards hospitality and clubs.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I had no clue what Cmaa was or that clubs were even a part of hospitality when I first went to Niagara. I kind of stumbled upon Cmaa, and then after that, I think that the driving force to kind of stay with it was my faculty advisor, the students that were also passionate. But I really do think that for me, it was my first internship. I think that getting an internship so quickly, that obviously helped, but kind of realizing this whole world of clubs and how much there is to Cmaa, that kind of came from my internship and not so much the Cmaa chapter at school. Yes, we had a great faculty advisor and we were able to do so much, but I think in your first internships, that's really where you get that club bug, and that'll kind of determine whether you want to stay or whether you want to go.
Going off of that, I think having peers in your Cmaa student chapter is like really motivating, being surrounded by so many people that are getting all these internships, and then they come back and you hear all of their stories and you're like, wow, like this industry is really great. Having all of those people surrounding you is super motivating.
So Emily, you kind of touched on it, but I feel like we haven't really fully said it. We've said it without saying it, but the importance of network within clubs, and whether it's Cmaa or the faculty advisor network or your chapter network or your club network, it's really, even, you know, when we go back to when you all were answering the question about why you want to meet with the GM, part of that could be to build your network so they know who you are and your name and can use you later on, whether or not you're going to admit that that's why you want to sit in their office and maybe spend some time with them. But if they have a face-to-face interaction with you, there's a lot more likeliness that they're going to remember your name if it comes up kind of down the road. And so I think we haven't said networking directly, but I think that's a big one to kind of touch on with the industry as a whole.
Margot, if you don't mind me kind of building off of both of what you and Emily just said, for the club managers who are on the call, I think that networking is something that y'all should also pay attention to with your internships as well, because the students are telling you that their internships has been one of the bases of what they wanted to continue with in club management. And they don't keep that silent. If they had a great experience, they're going to tell all their peers, which then helps us increase at a university level recruitment practices for CMAA. If they have a negative experience, just like your club members, they tell more people. And then we have a hard time getting people to want to come into clubs. So these experiences, I think, they don't just stay at your club and your internship, like they come back to campus. And also it makes it that much easier for your individual club to recruit because, you know, Emily's best friend now wants to have the same experience that she did. And so now they want to go back and do the same thing at the same club. So I think it all kind of ties in together.
And I also, hi, I'm not in the club industry. I'm actually the internship director for the School of HRTM at the University of South Carolina. So go Gamecocks, yay Matt, you're awesome. I'm here to support him. But it's not just networking, but it's managing your network. And this is something that we talk to students often about. like, it's great that you're going and you're sitting down with these GMs and you're connecting with them, but how are you following up with them? And you know, one connection, that one conversation, well, if you're trying to follow up with them a year from now, but you haven't talked to them in that year, or you haven't touched base with them, or you know, whatever, they're going to have a harder time like vouching for you or helping you to pursue. So it's really managing it and learning to manage your network well will get you a lot further. And I have learned very quickly just from being on some of these CMAA calls and just listening to Jessica and Dr. Gustafson, who is on this call at the university. Like, CMAA is such a small network, and you know, the people in here and the club managers, they all know everyone, and so just always making sure that you're putting your best face forward, your best foot forward, that you're always making a first impression on someone. And honestly, and for my club managers that are on this call, the club managers that are on this call, one of the things that I would encourage you to do with your interns, is from someone who works with interns on a daily basis and employers, is to actually sit down and once you hire that intern for the summer, sit down and have a conversation with them, like almost interview them again, but this time really take into consideration their communication style, how do they like to be managed, etc., because ultimately that's going to help you have a better student, a better productivity, and contribution to your club environment at the end of the, you know, as you're going along in that internship.
That's great advice, Ashley. I think that sometimes it just reminded me of something. Sometimes we don't do a great job at the chapter level explaining kind of what the next steps are after internship and how it's not really an ending. It's a development of a relationship, because that's what club managers talk about, right? You spend a year or 6 months working for a club and a manager. That's the start of a relationship, and that manager is going to remember you, you know, especially if you were outstanding. But, you know, I'm not sure about this region, but other regions offer scholarships. So when before my student goes out on internship, I'm like, keep in mind, the back of your mind, when you have the initial interview, part of that is, you know, one of my goals is to be able to get a letter of recommendation for you so I can apply for Joe Purdue scholarship or whatever the regional scholarship is that you offer, because that's real money. And I think when I talk to the managers about this in my own region, I'm like, you got to understand, that's uncapped scholarship dollars. It doesn't go into the general pool. It goes right to that student because they did a 300-hour work experience. They applied for it through your region. And that's huge. I mean, I have a couple of students that have, since their junior year, they've accumulated $12,000 or $13,000 in real scholarship money. They're taking that money and going to grad school. I had the conversation with one student, maybe you should think about BMIs if you're really going to be in the club industry. Start thinking about your certification and banking that money. So I think there's a larger conversation to Ashley's point about relationship building from the student side. This is long term. And again, I will say it, in other industries, I don't see that relationship as strongly as I see it in the club industry. Margot, I think there were a couple questions in the chat.
Yeah, Phil is walking his dog, but he's from Bretton Woods and is starting an internship program this summer, his first F&B internship program, and is asking any thoughts on hiring interns who have expressed a lack of interest in clubs, but more in boutique hotels, specifically looking for a gateway due to lack of opportunity. Made him a bit hesitant to hire them, but would love to know if anybody has thoughts on maybe hiring somebody that's, we've hired people before that say they want to work in Marriott or they want to work at hotels, but this is the job that they got. And so if anybody on the panel or anybody, I guess, has thoughts as to if he should be hesitant or take them on, or advice for Phil.
I mean, last summer I took an internship. I've known that I wanted to go into clubs since before that, but I took an internship almost in recreation management, and it was not what I planned at all. But I enjoyed it so much, and I learned so much, because before that I had really only done food and beverage. And so having that opportunity to work in another field of the industry was really awesome for me. And I learned that, maybe I don't necessarily want to go into food and beverage. Not that it's like taking away from one and giving it to the other, but I think that if you want to have these well-rounded people working, then you have to give them chances in other spots that they maybe might not have considered before. I mean, I really enjoyed my time going kind of off the rails a little bit, but yeah.
If y'all don't mind me saying, just as a faculty member, I think sometimes the problem with students not joining the club industry is they just have never been experienced to the club industry. Guarantee the person who wants to work in a boutique hotel, her parents just took her to a boutique hotel and she had an amazing experience, and now she wants to work in that environment. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't grow up in clubs, and so they don't know why they're so special, which is why we need to continue to do things like this, and maybe even grab interns from places they say they want to work at but couldn't get a job, kind of a thing, and bring them into clubs to show them this. You're not going to get another experience like you will in a private club industry than you will at a major hotel chain where you get lost in the numbers, so I say bring them on and see, if we can make them feel special and make them feel like this is a career path for them, just to introduce them to it.
That's a great point, Jessica. And to Emily's point earlier about, the excitement of a peer coming back to the chapter. So I was thinking, we had Jamie Walker from the country club, help me, of Cleveland, Indianapolis, somewhere Midwest.
Ohio, yeah.
Ohio, right? Come into one of the chapter meetings because he had contacted us. He did, and I thought this was very well done. At his club, he does a post-interview of the interns, really professionally looking in the club, and he asks the questions about, what your experience was like, what would you recommend, how was kind of just a post-interview of the externship experience at the club. I can tell you, if clubs did that and funneled that to the faculty advisors, that would be very powerful for us to use in freshman classes and in the club class. We always have our own students do that, but many times you have students that haven't experienced a full internship. There are different levels. I think the hardest thing for the managers to understand is, we have these students and they're here for 4 years. Some of them are only members of the student chapter for 4 months and they disappear. That's why we are constantly recruiting students for the chapter. I made a rule last year, if you were a student member, you couldn't come to a student chapter meeting unless you brought another person, right? That's how we spread the word on campus. So I think seeing the end and a peer saying that from the end could be a very powerful statement for future students. What do the students think about that? What do our student panels think about that?
Just let you know, Grace had to go to work, so she just jumped off, just as a heads up. She's not bailing on us.
No worries. Emily, did they take videos? And how do you tell another student chapter member about your experience? Are you just doing storytelling, or?
So one of our previous meetings, we kind of had a little internship highlight meeting. So a lot of people that maybe haven't had internships yet, or that were interested in looking for something else, we all had them come, and some of the people that had different internships from all over kind of gave their story on what they did, what they learned, some of the other things, like if they had housing, things like that. We got a little brief overview. And then that kind of opened some more doors for students to see, oh, like this person had this great experience at an internship, or on this side of the country had a great experience. So just being able to share your story of what you did, because these other students aren't going there, so they don't know if it's a great experience or not unless someone else is telling them.
So at Niagara, our CMAA board, we would actually go into different hospitality classes. The professors would let the students come. We'd share our summer experiences about our internships and kind of just talk about CMAA as also a recruitment way, but just to kind of share the internships that we've had. So after that kind of 3 to 4 weeks of grinding to recruit for the upcoming school year, our first official meeting of the year, all members, a part of our CMAA chapter, would kind of go around the room, share their experiences, about their internships for the summer, to give the new members kind of some insight as to different clubs, kind of start familiarizing themselves with types of internships and clubs and where they could go across the country.
I think it would be really cool. I tried this last year, but was not successful, to grab your university's feed for the day and just do a day of being an intern at a club, right? Just so you can do it. I don't think we use social media enough to create club awareness on campus. And I think some of it's like, you got an old guy like me that I got LinkedIn, I got Instagram, that's about as far as I'm getting. But I think the students could do it. It's always, I can tell you, it's much more powerful coming from the students than it is coming from anybody else. So you have a great opportunity to do things like this, but to also bolster this back on campus. And I can tell you that faculty look for guest speakers all the time, and I think giving back in that way helps you, and it also helps the industry.
I just want to say, I know that a lot of, we're all on this call because this is all something we're all passionate about or trying to learn more about. And I think we all could go on for another 2 or 3 hours discussing this and opportunities and stuff. But I do want to be respectful of everybody's time and understand that those that work in country clubs, maybe Mondays happen to be your day off. And so want to be respectful of that time if anybody does want to step off. This was recorded, so we do have it if anybody would like to share it with somebody else. But I definitely think that we've started the conversation, started dialogue, hopefully educated some managers that are either starting internship programs or looking to improve or adapt their programs. Hopefully educate some faculty advisors as well, and then students given some inspiration or some ideas of what to do next. This is definitely something myself, Carolyn, and Student Development Committee here are very passionate about and feel strongly about and want to continue to educate and kind of communicate that. So I appreciate Emily, Grace, Zach, Matt, and Dr. Samel for all being on the call today and giving us your insights. And you all have incredible experiences and are way far down in your career path, and further than you know. And so if we can turn around, look those coming up behind you and see how you can help them and make them just as successful as you all have been as managers. And then, of course, Carolyn, Megan, and Natalie for helping me put this education together. Hopefully we can continue the conversation, and maybe there'll be a part 2 of this. Maybe we've started something here, and we can continue the conversation. So appreciate everybody. Hope that those of you in warm, nice weather go out and enjoy the beautiful day, and we'll all be together again in person soon. So enjoy. Have a wonderful day.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot and Carolyn.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.